Nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, oh, today I will abandon God. But it happens slowly, gradually, one compromise at a time. A career that's demanding everything from you, a schedule that's leaving no room for anything, a success that is happening on the outside, but not necessarily fulfilling on the inside. And one day we wake up and we realize that we've been trying to fit it all into a life that was actually taking us further from God instead of bringing us closer to God. I know that feeling. I think probably most of us who have done our careers for years do know that. And what I found is that on the other side of that is more peace, prosperity, and purpose in simplicity. And I want to share that story, which is what I do here on this channel, Seek the Spirit. So I'm really glad that you made it here. If you are a follower who comes every week, thank you. If you're new here, I'm Janet, and I do these Tuesday YouTubes every single week. So please hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss when I go live. And also in the link below, you'll find that there's a link for my Heavenly Treasures Weekly, which is a newsletter that I send out every Sunday. And I'd love to have you also join that, because we are building a community. And this is a community of seekers. And we are building it one soul at a time. And we'd love to have you there as well. So let me tell you my story. I'm getting ready to head off to Cape Cod for my annual vacation, which I go every year. I used to live there. It's one of my favorite happy places in the world. And this year I have a special beach book. Every year I take a book to read on the beach. And this year I'm reading this book, which is The Practice of the Presence of God, recommended by Pope Leo. Now, this book was written by a Carmelite monk, and his name was Brother Lawrence. And the interesting thing about Brother Lawrence is that he worked in the kitchen, and he spent all of his time peeling potatoes and washing dishes. Nothing too exciting. And yet his entire life was spent getting closer to God. So I want to read to you from the introduction to this book that was written by Matthew Kelly. And I think you're going to like this. It says, I have it highlighted in here, as you can see. It says, there is no time like the present to make a change in your life. People don't wake up in the morning thinking, today I will abandon God. They wake up thinking about emails, deadlines, kids, meetings, money, health, headlines, and some kind of anxiety that is humming beneath all of it. God is rarely rejected outright. He is just slightly postponed. So let's talk about that a little bit. It certainly resonated with me when I heard that. And, you know, we've all hit this new stage of life, right? Where you could call it retirement. It used to be called retirement. I like to refer to it as a change in purpose, where we come face to face with this postponement that we've put God on. And now we want to build a new relationship with God. We want to have a new sense of purpose. We want to have a renewed sense of well-being and energy. And that is exactly what has recently happened to me. I never really had a dramatic falling away from God. He was always there, but slowly my focus went to work, to kids, to business, to all those things that we talked about earlier. And I was chasing success. I was chasing money and security and, yes, fulfillment. Life has been very good. And God has always been there waiting patiently, What I didn't know was how much better it was going to be when I stopped trying to fit into the world and I let him take over and I could fit in with his plan. So here's what I've learned about not fitting into the world, because I actually never did quite fit in. So as a child, I moved around from school to school. So I was always sort of the new kid. I didn't really fit in corporate America. I had my own kind of beliefs about things, and I always found that the system was a little bit hard to wrap my head around. I haven't really been one for coffee clatches or the little neighborhood groups. And I seem to have moved a lot, so I never really got into big neighborhood coffee clatches or any of that. And so all of a sudden, I realized that one day I was visiting Tortola. I was thinking about that. And it was kind of funny because they were talking about the people who were the native whatever they're called, Tortolans. And they were known as the belongers, and everybody else was not a belonger. And it just struck me funny, because I thought to myself, well, I don't really know what it's like to be a belonger because I've never really been one. Anyway, I built my career. I hired a lot of teams. I hired a lot of people and managed those teams. And I used to think I was important. And very often I was sort of the central person in that team. But hey, guess what? At some point, I either got fired, not usually because of anything I did, but because of something that was going on in corporate. Maybe I wasn't getting along with management, or I was an outsider there, or I was laid off, or the company went into bankruptcy, or who knows. But right, all these things change. And all of a sudden you're on the outside again, even when you thought you were on the in crowd. So the thing is, I always got stellar results and things that I was doing in life, but I didn't really ever get into the systems and the hierarchy and all of that. But anyway, regardless, I always ended up on my feet, landing on my feet. And so after my corporate days, which, I spent almost 30 years in corporate, so I did okay. I ended up becoming an entrepreneur. And, you talk about being alone, right? Like that's really being alone when you're out there building something yourself. And every time that it worked, I was happy. And every time that I hit up against an obstacle, I felt rejected. And being in sales doesn't help that, right? Because there's always rejection going on. But I always felt like God was there, and that I did have some sort of a purpose in my entrepreneurship, and that I was doing good work in the world, because I have always kind of used the gifts and the talents that God gave me in a way that made me feel like my work was fun and enjoyable for me. But there comes a point where we all get to, where we kind of look at what we're doing and we start to realize, it's not really fitting with me anymore. And that was kind of where I got about a year ago, beginning of 2025. So I took a sabbatical to consider retirement. I never really thought I wanted to retire, but God showed up during that sabbatical in a really big way. And he made it abundantly clear to me that if I was willing to surrender to a life with Jesus, as going his way, his truth, his life, that I would find more peace, prosperity, and purpose. And throughout the year, I recognized that that was what was happening to me. Like, things were just taking on a life of their own. And I was doing like literally nothing but being on a sabbatical and studying more scripture and getting closer to Jesus and praying more and attending mass and just doing things that were bringing me, closer to him in his presence, which was great. So I read recently something that says you spend the first half of your life building a life in the world. What if the second half is about giving away what God taught you while you were building it? So let me say something that might surprise you. Like, I have nothing against pickleball or golf or bridge or volunteering for Meals on Wheels. Those are all really good things. Naps are good. Lunches with neighbors and friends, that's good. But what if none of those things really light you up? What if you hit a season of your life and the world hands you this permission slip and says, you can relax. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to make money anymore. But something inside you is saying, no, God is calling me to something more, because he is. What is that something that uses everything you built and learned and experienced in your life so far? What is that something that would make the world better? So we've been conditioned to believe that at a certain age means that we go into a certain new way of life, and that the second half is about winding down, stepping back, making room for the next generation. But what if the next generation needs you? What if they need what you know? And what if they could benefit from your gifts and your life experiences? What if God wants you to step forward into a new purpose? And what if retirement is not the end of your purpose, but a beginning of a new one? One that is no longer defined by a job title or a company's needs or even a paycheck. One thing that is centered entirely on God are your gifts. He placed them in you before you were born, and they look different for every one of us, for every single person. Now, for me, I'm loving writing my newsletter every single week, the Heavenly Treasures Weekly, which comes out every single Sunday. Every Tuesday, I come on here and I share something new on my path and my journey with you here on Seek the Spirit. And I also am working with a brain health company, which is not something that I am an expert in, but I'm learning. And I'm finding that I do have something to contribute in helping healthcare providers, professionals who are seeking a better way to serve their patients and to sort of shift what's happening in the whole world of healthcare, because it's broken, as most of you know. I get to spend more time with my grandchildren. I'm in charge of making sure that everybody in my big extended family stays connected in some way. And that is all important work that God has given to me. And for you, it's probably going to be something different. And that's the way it should be. We're all unique. We all have had life experiences. But the question remains the same. What did God teach you while you were building your first half of your life that needs to come out now and make the world better? What I've learned after all these years of not quite fitting in is that that was exactly right. The world is not where we are supposed to fit in. The world continually changes, and it's kind of crazy and chaotic and nutty. But God never changes. He is stable. He is loving. He is everything that we were created to know, love, and serve. So I learned to find my way back to Jesus, to recognize the gifts and the talents that are innate in me, and to actually start using them in a fun, simple way. And I also learned over the years of not fitting in that humility and perseverance actually go together, right? So each time there's some level of rejection, or somebody says, you know, you're not really included or invited into this group, we persevere. And that's worth something. So every moment of not quite fitting in brought me right here where I am, fully centered now on God's will, not mine. And I have this deep peace and this joy that doesn't depend on who approves of me. And I have a certainty that I belong to the one that matters. And this is the time of life to establish this new relationship with God, a new purpose, a renewed sense of well-being and energy. And Brother Lawrence found that in the monastery kitchen. I'm looking forward to digging my feet in the sand and reading about it on Cape Cod and enjoying a little bit of downtime. And I want to ask you something. Where are you trying to fit in right now that is costing you more than it is giving you? And what if everything you learned while you were building your first half of your life is exactly what someone around you desperately needs right now? Would you be willing to go out into the world with a new sense of purpose and a new plan and let God lead that way? I know that if you show up that way, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel this peace. Prosperity is going to open up for you. You're going to find this new sense of purpose. And you're going to know that you're walking into the second half with God doing what God is calling you to do. So this Sunday is Heavenly Treasures Weekly, and I'll be sharing a gospel story about a woman who had no business approaching Jesus, but she did it anyway. The apostles tried to push her away. But Jesus said to her in a very direct way what he thought of her and whether she was welcome at the table. So it fits in. It's a great with this theme that we're talking about. So make sure you subscribe so you can read that story. And next Tuesday, I'm going to be joined by someone very special. And I know he's listening right now. And that is my 14-year-old grandson, Brian. And he's going to be sharing his own testimony. And we're going to talk about what our relationship, the grandparent-grandson relationship, has meant to him. And I think you won't want to miss it. So tune in next Tuesday. And until then, keep ascending. Bye for now.